Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to completely deconstruct and then rebuild your entire understanding of the driving ecosystem. Okay, let's dive into this. For most of us, driving just feels like a purely technical skill, right? Turning a wheel, pressing a pedal, it becomes second nature. But today, we're looking at the road through a totally different lens. We're going to explore the actual architecture of the road itself. We'll look at navigating different user categories, the real heavy weight of legal responsibilities, and the complex system dynamics that govern how we all move together out there. And we're going to use the Rwanda Traffic Code as our prime example. Think of today's explainer as a guided tour for our new mental syllabus. We're going to build our knowledge layer by layer, from cold hard physical facts right up to the active mental models you need on the road. We'll cover 1. Redefining the public road. 2. The 4 road inhabitants. 3. Physics and legal responsibility. 4. Anatomy of duty of care. And finally, 5. Mechanics of defensive driving. Let's get to it. Starting off with Section 1, Redefining the public road. This is our first major paradigm shift. To really understand this ecosystem, we have to move away from the idea that we're just operating a solitary machine in a vacuum. Take a look at this comparison. On the left, we've got what I call the dangerous novice mindset, operating a machine. A novice kind of views the road as an exclusive private track. Their entire cognitive load is just hyper-focused on controlling their own vehicle, right? Just trying to keep it between the white lines. But on the right, we see the actual reality, managing a shared environment. The public road is literally a highly dynamic, shared ecosystem. It is packed with users moving at vastly different speeds with entirely different levels of physical protection. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean. Let me guide your eyes directly to the right side of this diagram. See those overlapping yellow hazard zones? That right there is the true architecture of the road. Traffic law doesn't just exist to tell you how fast your car can go. No, its primary purpose is to regulate these specific, highly dangerous intersections where your path crosses with a pedestrian or a cyclist or a massive heavy truck. Driving isn't about cruising down those isolated straightaways. It's entirely about successfully navigating those overlapping yellow zones. Moving on to Section 2, the 4 road inhabitants. Let's categorize exactly who we're sharing the space with based on their physical traits. So, now that we see the road as this shared ecosystem, who actually lives in it? We can break everyone down into 4 main categories, going from left to right. First up, we have motor vehicle drivers. They operate heavy machines capable of causing serious harm, which means they carry the greatest legal responsibility. Next, we have our vulnerable road users, like pedestrians. They have little to literally zero physical protection, so traffic law actually grants them extra legal shields. Then, we've got professional drivers, the folks handling passengers or cargo under incredibly strict operational regulations. And finally, special road users. Think emergency responders or agricultural vehicles, who operate under their own unique set of legal provisions. Let's break this down even further. Walk with me through the columns on this road user diagnostic matrix. Notice how a pedestrian moves at a really slow walking speed with absolutely zero physical protection. Because of that extreme vulnerability, if you look at the far right column, the mandated driver consideration column, it requires the absolute highest level of caution from everyone else. Now contrast that pedestrian with the heavy vehicle way down at the bottom. It moves at moderate speeds, sure, but it has massive weight and high protection. The consideration there changes completely. Other drivers now have to allow for much longer stopping distances, so the law actually scales your required behavior directly to the specific vulnerabilities of whoever you're interacting with. All right, Section 3, Physics and Legal Responsibility. Before we go any further, I want to ask you a Socratic question. Just think about this. If a collision occurs on the road, who inherently possesses the greater ability to prevent it? Well, the answer comes down to kinetic energy, which is simply mass multiplied by speed. We have to define this explicitly right now because it's the indisputable scientific foundation upon which all traffic law is built. Simply put, the more mass you have and the faster you're moving, the more kinetic energy you wield. Let's look at the actual numbers here. Over on the left, you've got a pedestrian walking at 5 kilometers per hour. They generate minimal kinetic energy. On the right, a car traveling at 60 kilometers per hour brings a massive amount of kinetic energy into the environment. So, going back to our question, who has the greater ability to prevent a tragedy? The driver, absolutely. Because motor vehicles possess exponentially greater mass and speed, the law intentionally imposes the heaviest burden of responsibility on their operators. The law is inherently asymmetrical because the physics are asymmetrical. When we map vulnerability against threat, it reveals a pretty stark contrast. Look up at the top right quadrant. Passenger vehicles and heavy trucks have high physical protection and a super high potential to cause harm. That is exactly where maximum legal responsibility sits. Now look down at the bottom left quadrant. Pedestrians and cyclists have extremely low protection and low potential to cause harm. They have high vulnerability. Those strict regulations we talked about, they're designed specifically to control that top right quadrant, just to ensure the absolute survival of everyone in the bottom left quadrant. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the visual metaphor of the feather and the anvil. A lot of people just assume traffic laws treat all users equally, but they absolutely do not. The Rwanda Traffic Code is mathematically weighted against those who control the most danger. The anvil, the car or the truck, carries the legal burden precisely because it is the anvil. So, if you're ever evaluating a complex traffic situation, just ask yourself, who poses the greatest physical danger? The law always assigns the burden of care to them. Section 4. Anatomy of duty of care. We are now shifting gears from those external physical rules to the internal, real-time mental processing you need as a driver. Notice how this graphic is shaped like a funnel and how it narrows as you move toward the bottom. Up at the top, you have your basic technical driving skills, steering, shifting, braking. That's just the baseline. Anybody can do that. But the law demands more than just technical skill. A driver's actions actually have to filter down through continuous observation. You constantly have to ask, who could be affected by my actions? Then it filters even further down through anticipation, asking, what hazards are developing right now? All of this active mental filtering leads to the ultimate goal at the very bottom of the funnel, legal judgment. That is what actually produces the safest, most legally sound response. And this brings us to a really vital definition. Defensive driving is not some advanced physical maneuver like a Hollywood stunt driver would pull off. No, defensive driving is a mental shock absorber. It is an active cognitive state that proactively expects the whole system to break down and prepares you for it before it even happens. Let's move to and see how this builds in practice. Take a look at the ripple effect graphic on the right side of this loop. We have a nice, safe predictability loop on the left. But what happens when a child unexpectedly runs into the road? Or a cyclist suddenly swerves to miss a pothole? Or a pedestrian simply misjudges a car's speed? They create dangerous ripples in the system. As a defensive driver, your job is to anticipate those mistakes before they happen and absorb those ripples safely, keeping the entire system from collapsing into an accident. Section 5. Mechanics of defensive driving. It's time to put everything we've learned together into a real-world spatial application. So we've covered the physics, and we've covered the mental models. Look at this wide orange cone of vision emanating from the car at the crosswalk. This right here is your spatial model for safety. Notice how the driver technically has the legal right to continue forward. But look closely at the ecosystem inside that orange cone. You've got a pedestrian on the curb, a motorcycle turning, a cyclist lingering near a bus. Having the right of way doesn't mean you just blindly step on the gas. Safe driving requires applying the law through good judgment. It means actively increasing your observation, reducing your speed, and maintaining a safe bubble of space around those vulnerable users, completely regardless of your right to proceed. The difference between an amateur and a master is stark here. On the left side, you see the classic novice mistake. A novice driver scans an intersection, and their brain really only registers the other big, heavy vehicles. They just assume everyone's going to follow the rules. But on the right side, we see what we call the examiner's X-ray vision. When an examiner tests you, they aren't just looking at the cars. Their vision pierces straight through to find that cyclist hidden in the intersection or the pedestrian about to step off the curb. They prioritize spotting the highly vulnerable users because, as we now know, that is where the true legal responsibility lies. So the crucial point is that all of this theory is directly mapped onto the physical world. This cross-section shows the actual architectural vocabulary for everything we just learned. The roadway in the center, that's for those heavy, high kinetic energy vehicles. But look at the edges. Dedicated cycle lanes, raised footpaths. These physical boundaries are the literal manifestation of the legal protections we discussed today. Understanding these precise boundaries is how you actively navigate the traffic code in real life. We've built this up from simple asphalt into a complex web of physics, law, and human vulnerability. The heavy machinery you operate makes you the most responsible entity in this entire space. So I want to conclude this explainer by leaving you with this final provocative thought to carry with you the next time you turn the key. When you get behind the wheel, do you only see the road or do you see the ecosystem? Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.